Okay, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us. Today, we have the pleasure of having Elizabeth Long and Zia Sumar, immigration experts from Long Mangaji. So they will be taken over for the next hour and a half to 2 hours to explain to you some clarification about immigration, pursuing PR and all that good stuff. So I will give it to Elizabeth, and thank you again for joining us.
Thank you so much, Hussam. It's always great to be here with you guys. So just a little bit of housekeeping. What we're going to use is the Q&A button for you guys to raise any questions you might have throughout the presentation. At the end, Zia and I will go through your questions and we'll discuss them. Now, we may or may not be able to get through everything, but please do put your questions in and we will hopefully answer them at the end. Okay? All right. So let's get started. So essentially, Zia and I, we've been coming to Mohawk, especially for these webinars. We've been doing it before for seminars in person, but during COVID, we've been doing these webinars for a while. And it's important that you guys are here because with immigration, one of the most important things is to plan. Now, rules change all of the time. And what we're telling you today is true today or right now, but who knows? Laws may change as well very shortly afterwards. And so we will be signing you guys up to our newsletters. Feel free to unsubscribe if that's not useful to you. But the only way that we're able to keep you guys updated on changes to the news is by emailing you guys afterwards on important changes, okay? So what we're going to do is first we want to talk about temporary residence and what it is that you need to do to keep and maintain your status in Canada. Make sure that you're working legally, make sure that you're getting your studying legally and you're getting your work permit afterwards. And then we'll move on to permanent residence.
Perfect. So when we're talking about status here in Canada, the first thing you get, study permit, right? That's allowing you to study here in Canada. Now, it's important that throughout your time here, you always make sure you have temporary status, right? So that study permit that you get, it has an expiry date on it. So it's really important that you submit an extension application prior to the expiry date that's listed on that study permit application. Now, when you submit an extension application, okay, while you're waiting for a decision on that extension, you have what's called implied or maintained status. So this allows you to continue studying in Canada while you're waiting for a decision on that extension application. Now, IRCC's website tells you that you need to submit your extension applications 30 days prior to the expiry of your current permit. That's not correct, okay? So the law is that you have, as long as you submit your extension application prior to the expiry date listed on that study permit, then you will have your status implied or maintained status so you can continue to reside here. Now, it is important that you submit the application properly, okay? So it has to be a complete application. If you forget, for example, to include your processing fees, the application will be returned, okay? And then it's like you haven't filed the extension application at all, right? So it's as if you missed that deadline. And in those cases, what you can do is apply for restoration. So it's acknowledging the fact that, okay, yes, I've lost my status, but now in order to get my status back, you submit that restoration application. But there is a timeline. So you can only apply for restoration within 90 days of losing your status. Okay, so let's say, for example, your study permit expired and forgot to extend it. From that expiry date, you have 90 days to submit a restoration application to get your status back.
Okay, so another concept that we wanted to make sure that you guys understand is the difference between high skilled and low skilled work. Now, currently, our system, especially when we talk about permanent residents, you'll see that the current system differentiates very much between what's called high skilled and what's deemed low skilled. And all occupations in Canada right now fall under the National Occupation Classification Codes called the Noc Codes, NOC codes, okay? And so there's 5 classifications. O, A, and B are high skilled, and C and D are low skilled. It's not always that clear as to what is high skilled, what is low skilled. For example, if I was in an office situation, a receptionist, that would be a low skilled position. The secretary would be a high skilled position. Accounting clerk would be low skilled. A bookkeeper would be high skilled. Okay. And so oftentimes you have to make sure, and it's kind of an art almost, to determine whether or not someone's position falls into which occupation. This is the current system. Now, coming up in 2021, it's not 2021. This is not 2021. It's probably not going to be in place until next year. But by next year, the Noc system it's supposed to be changing to not only a 5-tier, but a 6-tier. And this is not spelled wrong. This is what they call TEER, okay, system. And it remains to be seen how IRCC is going to incorporate this. Remember, I told you guys I'm going to be sending you guys newsletters and put you on the newsletter list. If you want to know this information, once we know it, we'll be sending out some information on the newsletters for you guys. Okay.
Okay, so let's talk about studying and working on that study permit, because this is definitely an important question and one that we get very frequently. So while you're here in Canada and you're here on that study permit, some of the conditions of that study permit are very obvious, right? Like the expiry date that we just talked about. But there are other conditions on the study permit that are not as obvious. They're implied that you should know this and that you have to be doing this. So one of these is that you must be actively pursuing your studies. So what this means is that while you're here in Canada on that study permit, you do have to be making progress towards the completion of your program, right? So IRCC is looking to say, okay, were you studying, right? Were you actually taking your classes so that you were making progress towards finishing the program of study? Now, once you stop studying, whether it's you finish your program or you leave your program, so stop studying, you lose your status after 90 days of stopping, okay? So as soon as you stop, think about the 90-day timeline, because that's when your status on your study permit will expire, irregardless of what the expiry date is listed on that study permit. So if you stop studying and you have 8 months left on that study permit before the expiry date, before you reach the expiry date, important to know that it's not actually those 8 months, it's the 90 days that you have to keep in mind. Now, if your permit expires sooner than that, then obviously beware of that expiry date, because we're looking at the earlier of the two. The exceptions to this is if you are on a scheduled break, okay? Now, when I say scheduled break, I'm not talking about a break that you decide to create. So you can't just decide, okay, I'm taking a semester off and this is now a scheduled break. We're looking particularly to the academic calendar of the program and school that you're studying at, okay? So IRCC refers back to the school to say, is this a scheduled break or not? So for example, if you're doing a bachelor's degree, typically you have 2 semesters of classes and then a summer semester off, that would be considered a scheduled break. The other exception is an authorized leave. So this is where there are particular situations where individuals may need to take a leave from school, but it does have to be, for it to be considered an authorized leave, it has to be approved by the school itself, okay? And really important that if you are on an authorized leave, and they can be for a variety of reasons, it can be medical, it can be family reasons, if you are on an authorized leave, it's really important to make sure that you keep a written record of that approval that you've received from the school, because you will need it later on when you're applying for further, whether it's a further study permit or your postgrad work permit. Another thing with studying is that right now, so pre-COVID, studying outside of Canada or studying online, always a problem, right? But we've seen that over the last now 2 years, I guess, we've had to move online, right? And so IRCC has certainly created policies that have helped students that are stuck outside of Canada or that weren't able to come when their program started. So for those of you who are taking classes online or are outside of Canada, up until the winter 2021, IRCC said it's fine. So you'll still be eligible for the postgrad work permit. It won't affect your future. However, and Elizabeth will talk about this a little bit more further on in our presentation, but it can be problematic in terms of applying for permanent residence or qualifying for express entry points, but I'll leave that to Liz to get into in a little bit. The other important concept to keep in mind is that you can work on your study permit, okay? But you do have to be a full-time student, okay? So the study permit does allow international students to work, but only if you are a full-time student, okay? So while you're studying, if you're full-time, you can work off campus up to 20 hours a week during the school year and full-time during any regularly scheduled break, okay? Now that continues until you have, the exception to that is if you're in your last semester, okay? So if in your last semester of studies, you don't need a full-time course load, you still can continue working off campus that 20 hours a week. But again, this is only for your last semester where you don't need a full-time course load in order to graduate. Now, once you've completed your studies, so what I mean when I say you've completed your studies is as soon as you've received any sort of written confirmation from the school that you have met the requirements of your program. So this could be something like your final grades, a letter from the school, the earliest written confirmation that you've received that you've finished your program means that you can no longer work on that study permit. Okay, so your ability to work part-time off campus, that stops as soon as you receive that written confirmation, because at that point, you're not considered a student anymore. Elizabeth will talk about it in a moment, but once you've applied for the postgrad, that allows you to start working again. And lastly, that study permit, for some of you, you may be pursuing a second program. So you may not be applying for the postgrad work permit. So if you are in between programs, you finished your first program, you've been accepted to your second program, and the time in between the two programs is 150 days or less, you can continue working on that study permit while you wait for the start of your second program.
So Zia, let's just run through a scenario, because I know that this can be kind of confusing to students. Okay, so let's say a student is doing their final exams. How many hours can they work then?
So they're still a student at that point because they haven't graduated, so they can work up to 20 hours a week.
Okay, and then when they're finished their exams, but they haven't received their grades yet?
Still a student, still 20 hours a week.
Okay, once they have received their grades and it says that they've completed the program.
So as soon as that happens, they're no longer a student. So you have to stop working. So no hours a week.
What if they haven't received the letter yet from Mohawk saying that they've completed their program?
They still have to stop working.
Because they've already received a notification. Any notification, guys, not just a letter, and definitely not your diploma or your degree. Okay, it's the first notice. Okay, and then they have to stop working. When can they start working again?
As soon as they've filed their postgrad or they filed their work permit application, they can start working full time.
Okay, and we're gonna talk about that now. Okay, all right. So we're going to talk about the post-grad work permit. And you, you guys have to realize that the post-grad work permit is a golden ticket, okay? You have won, once you graduate, you can win the golden ticket. You don't even need to go to the chocolate factory, okay? You can win the golden ticket because you're an international student. Why do I say this is a golden ticket? It's because it gives you an opportunity to work anywhere that you want to in Canada. Okay, it's an open work permit, and there are very, very few opportunities like that. Most work permits will require you to have a job offer. Not only will it require you to have a job offer, but most work permits would require the employer to file an LMIA showing that they can't find a Canadian to do the job. Okay, but you guys have this one-time opportunity. Now, it is a once in a lifetime opportunity. You only get one golden ticket in your life. So you cannot waste the time because you may not be able to get another work permit. Getting another work permit may require you to get an LMIA, which could be very, very difficult to get, okay? If not impossible, okay? So when you're doing your planning for immigration, when a client comes to us, people say, oh, should I come to you after I've graduated, after I've work experience? I say, come to me as early as possible. Even before you come to Canada, come to me, okay? It's because you guys have to understand that when you're planning your immigration strategy, you look to the future as to how you're going to get permanent residence, and then you go backwards. Okay, so your post-grad work permit, if you've only done a one-year program, you only get a one-year work permit. That, especially now when it could be difficult to find a high-skilled job, okay, may not be enough time for you to get, perhaps you need a one-year work experience in order to get permanent residence, okay? Now, if you were to complete a one-year program and then you realize, oh, one-year work permit is not enough, you can complete another one-year program. So you don't apply for the postgrad work permit after the first program. You wait until you complete a second one-year program, and then 1 + 1 in this case equals 3. If you have a 2-year program or a 1-year plus another 1-year program, you get a 3-year work permit, which will be a lot more flexible for your time in order to get what you need to do in order to get your permanent residence. Okay. Now, immigration has, in the past few years, been really, cracking down on reviewing transcripts. They used to that we didn't need to submit transcripts, but recently they have, and this is because they have maintained that you can only get a postgrad work permit if you are a full-time student in every single semester except the last semester, okay? And oftentimes, what may be obvious to some people is not obvious on the transcript. So if there are any discrepancies, if you're looking at your transcript and there are only a few courses on there and for each semester that doesn't meet the full course load, an officer may very well reject it. Now, sometimes we have been able to get the postgrad work permits for exemptions to this part-time rule, but it is a case-by-case basis. And so, if you were to have a choice between going full-time or part-time, I would say go full-time. Sometimes students come to me and they say, look, Elizabeth, I just can't do full-time this year. Maybe they have health issues. Maybe they have issues with, fees for that, paying the fees for that semester. In these situations, I advise them to stop studying, not go full-time, and ask the school for authorized leave. This is what Zia was talking about, is if you ask the school to give you leave for 1 semester, now you can't work with authorized leave, okay? You're not a full-time student, you can't work during authorized leave, but what you can do is take a break. and then come back the second semester. So authorized leave is only one semester, 150 days is max, okay? But you can come back the second semester and you should still be then able to be eligible for the postgrad work permit. Okay, oops, I think I missed something here. Yeah. All right, now, very, very important. When should you apply for the postgrad work permit? My advice to you is to take a look at your study permit, okay, and see when it expires. And then when you get your first indication, okay, it doesn't have to be the letter from the school. It could be when you first get indication on your transcripts that you've completed the program, or something even on your account, okay? And it doesn't matter that you don't check your accounts, okay? The date starts when you can check it. When first it's given to you. At that point is when you've completed your program. You have to stop working right there. Now, you have 90 days from that point, or when your study permit is still valid, okay, the earlier of either of those dates to apply for your postgrad work permit. Why do I say it's 90 days? Some of you guys may go on the IRCC website and then think, I think Elizabeth is wrong. It says 180 days on the IRCC website. Why do I say 90 days? It's because your status, going back to the first slide, when we talked about study permits with Zia, your status stops 90 days after you finish your studies, after you're no longer a full-time student, okay? And so if you apply after the 90 days, you will likely get your application rejected if you did not file a restoration of status application, because you would have been out of status. Or if you apply after your study permit is not valid, again, you have to file a restoration of status. Furthermore, you cannot work after applying for your work permit if it's beyond the 90 days or if your study permit has already expired, okay? So make sure that you have a valid study permit and make sure it's within 90 days of the time that you first received notification of the completion of your program, and then you can start working as soon as you've applied for the postgrad work permit. All right, let's talk about permanent residence. The first application category that I wanted to speak with you guys about is express entry. Most of you would have probably already heard about express entry. It's the most well-known program. And we're going to go through some of the basic details about this program. So first of all, in a nutshell, in order to go through express entry system, first you have to create an online profile if you qualify under one of three categories: the Federal Skilled Worker class, Canadian Experience class, and the Federal Skilled Trades class, okay? Just because you have created an online profile does not mean that you have applied for express entry. All you have done is you've entered yourself into the express entry pool as a candidate, okay? When you enter the pool, you will have a series of points based on your background, and also if you have provincial nomination. That is based on the express entry system. And every couple of weeks or so, the government has a draw based on your score. And now also very importantly, and this was never really the case before COVID, but now post-COVID it very much is whether or not is the category that you qualified for when you entered the pool. So let's move on to the categories to enter and qualify for the program. The first category is called the Federal Skilled Worker class. Now, many of you may already qualify under this class, okay? To qualify, you have to have at least 1 year of high-skilled, full-time, which is at least 30 hours a week, continuous, no breaks, of work experience in one occupation, okay? It does not have to be in Canada. It could be outside of Canada. You can be self-employed, okay? You can gain the work experience while you're studying, okay? But 1 year continuous high-skilled work experience in one occupation, that's full-time. After that, you also have to have an IELTS of 6.0 in each category, a CELF of 7 in each category. And beyond that, you'll have to meet a minimum score. You'll have to have sufficient financial savings, around 13,000 for a single person, add a few thousand more for each family member. But that's how you can qualify to get into the pool under the federal skilled worker class. Now, this is just to get into the pool, it's not to get out of the pool, okay? So many of you may be able to get into the pool, but we're not sure about your points as to whether or not you can get out. Now, pre-COVID, you know, they didn't really differentiate between the categories, and many people who had applied from outside of Canada under this category would have an equal opportunity to get invitation to apply. This past year, though, the government has not invited anyone under the Federal Skilled Worker Program yet to apply, and they concentrated more on people who fall under the Canadian Experience class. So the Canadian Experience class is very, very different from the Federal Skilled Worker. What the Canadian Experience class requires is that you have 1 year of high-skilled work experience in Canada where you are an employee, and it's not when you are a full-time student, and it has to be authorized, okay? Legal work experience. So what does that mean? This is the work experience that you would normally have after you've completed your studies and you can work legally, which means starts from when you've applied for the postgrad work permit, not just when you have the postgrad work permit in hand, okay, but only if you've applied properly and only if you're authorized to work at that time, okay? And of course, on your work permit as well. If you have a spouse who is in Canada and they have an open work permit, they can get the work experience probably faster than you if they're working in a high-skilled position. Okay, so you need that 1 year work experience. Very, very important as well as you need to be an employee and not a contractor, okay, not self-employed. Now, what do I mean by someone who's a contractor? A contractor is not someone who just has a contract. Everybody has a contract, okay? And even if you don't have a permanent job, that's okay. If you can still be an employee on a contract for like 1 year or 2 years, etc. That's absolutely fine. The difference between a contractor and an employee is contractor basically is in charge of their own business, and they are basically retained to perform some work for the company. This is, the difference is, for example, I want to hire someone to paint my house, okay? They're not an employee of mine. I'm going to give them some money, but they're going to go and file their own taxes, okay? That's the big difference. And so when you guys go out in the world and you guys are looking for jobs, sometimes you will get these, smaller, well, sometimes they're not even that small, but you might get these companies who say, okay, you know what, I don't want to bother with taxes. I'm going to just pay you money and you go and file your own taxes, okay? In that case, if they don't deduct CPP, EI, income tax from your pay stub, from your pay slip, then you could very well not qualify under this category because you could be deemed to be a contractor. So always make sure that you get a T4 and that you get pay stubs where you get deductions taken off of your salary. Okay. So the 1 year, and then you have to pass a language exam. But that's essentially, the work experience is crucial for the Canadian experience class. Skilled trades is something where we don't really go into for students such as yourself because it requires an LMIA or the trades certification by the Ontario College of Trades. And that normally is not there for most of your students, okay? All right, so let's say you can get into the pool. How do you get the points to get out of the pool, right? Okay, so let's take a look at the point system. The first thing that's very important is your age, okay? Once you get to your 30th birthday, it's no longer going to be happy birthdays, okay? Every year that you turn older in your 30s, your points drop by 5 or 6 points. By the time you go to the 40s, it's a fast slide, -10, -11. By the time you get to your 45th birthday, it's okay. You know, the good news is your points don't go down anymore. The bad news is that your points are 0. And, you know, the difference between someone in their 20s who has 110 points to someone in their 40, after 45, who has 0 points is a very, very marked difference because the whole express entry system is a competition between people with their points. If you're losing over 100 points, that's big. And there's not a lot we can do about age, except you want to apply as early as you can to make sure that you don't lose with the age. Okay, don't worry if you are older. Okay, we do have other options for you that we will be discussing as well. Education is very important. Those of you who already have a bachelor's degree or 3-year program that you've completed, and you're going to complete another program with Mohawk, your points will jump to another level once you have the second program completed. Language is one of the key dividers between people who can get invited to apply and people who can't. If you do not have work experience in Canada, generally speaking, we're looking at scores of 7s in reading, writing, and speaking for IELTS and an 8 in listening, or 9s in CELPIP. If you already have your work experience in Canada, 1 year of work experience in Canada, that could be lower. But do study for your IELTS, do study for your CELPIPs, because these language exams are key. The 0.5, you can drop by as many as 90 points if you're just 0.5 below on one of these results. It's not just the overall results. I don't care about overall results. It's every single one of the language, reading, writing, speaking, and listening. Relevant Canadian work experience is the work experience that I explained that is in the Canadian experience class. The only difference is this one is you counted within the last 10 years, whereas Canadian experience class is within the last 3 years. Foreign work experience, if you have high-skilled foreign work experience, you can also get points. It's 1 year to 2 years is one level, and then 3 years or above is another level. Spouse's education, language, and Canadian work experience can get you some points as well. Provincial Nominee Program, Zia is going to talk about that, where you can get 600 points if it's express entry linked. Previous study in Canada, since you guys are studying at Mohawk, you will likely get 15 points if it's 1 to 2 year program, or 30 points if it's a 3-year program or more. And ranged employment, a lot of people think, well, I have a job offer, I have arranged employment points. Likely not. Arranged employment is only for employer-specific work permit holders, not for people with the postgrad work permit who are on open work permits. If you have siblings in Canada who are permanent residents or Canadians, you can get some points there. And if you're fluent in French, you will likely get significant points if you can get to a certain level for your French exam. Okay. And trade certification, again, that's with the Ontario College of Trades, and that's certain certifications for certain trades only. Now, some of you, when you're looking at this, you might be thinking, okay, you know what, this is doable, I can do this. If you think you can, great, but it's always good to have an assessment first, okay? Some of you, when you look at this, you might be crying a little bit inside. If you are, it's okay. Zia's going to go through some options, other options for you, okay? All right.
So the programs that Elizabeth just spoke about, those are federal programs, right? They're Canada-wide. Comparatively, there are also provincial programs. So these are specific to the particular province that you're applying through. So we're going to be looking at Ontario. So when we talk about Ontario provincial programs, we can break them down into streams that are express entry based and those that are outside of express entry. Since Elizabeth just went through all the express entry streams with you, we'll start there. So in Ontario's express entry streams, there's 3 of them. But before we look at the program streams and the eligibility criteria for these streams, the first step, right, before we can even look at the Ontario program is qualifying under an express entry stream, right? So being in the express entry pool. Now, these are the programs that Elizabeth just went over, so I'm not going to go through them again. But what we need to know is that when we're talking about the Ontario programs and specifically looking at the express entry streams, the first step is to qualify in one of the 3 federal programs and creating a profile going into that express entry pool. So what Ontario does is they start by going into the federal express entry pool, and they filter it down. They take the large pool, they filter it down to candidates that meet their criteria. So one of Ontario's criteria. From there, they issue notifications of interest. Okay, so it's a letter, basically goes to the applicant and says, hey, Ontario is interested in you, come apply to us. Once you receive that letter, you have 45 days to apply to Ontario. Okay, when you submit your application, Ontario assesses it. If they approve it, you get an additional 600 points. Okay, so if you remember, Elizabeth just talked about the comprehensive ranking system and that there was a section in there for points for provincial nominees. This is what she was talking about. So here you can get 600 points through one of these streams. So let's take a look at the categories. The first one is the human capital priority stream. Okay, in terms of requirements, there's work experience, education, language, savings, and for any of the provincial streams, you do have to have an intent to reside in Ontario. One of the most notable differences with the human capital priority stream is the education requirement. So for this particular program, you need to have a minimum of a bachelor's degree. Okay, so a bachelor's degree, master's degree, all of this is fine, but the minimum requirement is a bachelor's degree. Now, over the last 2 years, the way that Ontario has been selecting people for the human capital priority stream is by doing targeted draws. And they've been doing 2 different draw types. So they've had priority occupations and they've had tech draws. Okay, when we talk about priority occupations, what this means is that Ontario has looked at the labor market needs in Ontario and have identified a list of occupations. Now, the list that they select from generally changes and it is fluid. The most recent one that we've seen was in October, and it included positions like HR managers, restaurant managers, advertising managers. So it does vary, but there's this priority occupations list that they've been using. Comparatively, Ontario has tech draws as well. Here we have 6, as you can imagine, tech-based occupations. Right now they include software engineer, computer engineer. Now, the way it works is that Ontario goes into the pool, like I said, and they've been looking at your primary occupation that you've listed in your express entry profile. If it falls under one of the occupations that's being selected, then you may qualify. But the added layer is that Ontario has also been looking at your CRS score. Okay, so they look at the pool, they look at occupations, they look at CRS scores. If you meet all of that, then you get a notification of interest and you can apply through the Human Capital Priority Stream. The second program is the French-speaking skilled worker stream. Again, we have requirements that include work experience, education, language, savings. Now, here with this, with the French-speaking skilled worker stream, you also have the education requirement being a minimum of a bachelor's degree or higher. And then for your language requirement, you have to demonstrate that you're proficient in both French and English. Okay, so on the French test, you have to have a minimum CLB level of 7, and on the English test, it's a minimum CLB of 6. Okay, so important to note that you need both language tests for this particular program. Now, Ontario's draws for the French-speaking skilled worker stream has not been limited by occupations. It's been general, so any occupation can qualify, but they have been restricting the CRS scores that they've been drawing for this particular program. And then lastly, the third program that falls under the express entry stream is the skilled trade stream. Now, for this program, there is a work experience requirement. You do need to have at least 1 year of work experience in Ontario in a listed skilled trade. Okay, so this program does not include every occupation. Okay, we're looking at specific skilled trades that are listed out for this particular stream. It includes things like bakers, construction trades, mechanical trades. So there are specific occupations. And that work experience has to be within the past 2 years from when you apply. That work experience, like I said, has to be in Ontario, and you do need to have a work permit when you're completing that work experience. In terms of language requirement, CLB 5, and there is still the settlement funds requirement for the skilled trade stream. Now, what you'll notice is through all of these 3 categories, no job offer is required. So that's an important consideration, is that with the Ontario express entry streams, a job offer is not required to qualify for any of them. Now,
oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, I just wanted to kind of mention to you guys, if you guys are in the construction trades or mechanics or baker, etc., the skilled trades is something where if you don't have enough points, you think, to meet the normal draws for express entry. Earlier this year, they had gone down to 300s, etc., but now they seem to have been creeping up. And I think the last one was around mid-400s, right? And so if you guys don't have that many points, but you do have 1 year of work experience in the trades, it's still worth it for you guys to put your name into the express entry, because Ontario often will invite people a few times a year with the trades under the skilled trades category. And if you apply with them, you get 600 points added to your points, and you will get an invitation to apply.
Yeah, that's a very important note, right? Because when we're comparing the different programs, whether you're looking at the federal and the provincial together, like Elizabeth, like you just said, the federal stream for the skilled trades, the minimum scores have been high, and that's not always attainable. With Ontario this year, they went down to 300. So your CRS score had to be at least 300 to qualify under the skilled trade stream. So yeah, definitely an important point to note.
Okay.
And this always goes back to planning, right? Knowing the different options, knowing what works best for you.
That's right.
Okay. So that's the express entry streams. Those are the ones that work with the federal programs. Now, comparatively, Ontario also does have streams that are outside of express entry. Okay. When you qualify for one of these streams, the first step is to create a profile in Ontario's portal. So this is completely separate, again, completely separate from the express entry program. You go onto Ontario's website, you create an expression of interest, okay? And from there, Ontario does draws. So they're looking specifically at the program that you qualified under and doing a draw for that particular stream. There's no set schedule. They don't announce it in advance. So if you do qualify, you want to think about being in that pool as soon as you can. When you're in the pool for your stream, you get a score based on the scoring system for that particular program. So it's a little different than for each stream in terms of the maximum number of points or what criteria they're looking at. So it is important to know that as well, because the draws are based on the stream. When you do get an invitation to apply from Ontario, you only have 14 days, very, very short. We only have 14 days to submit a complete application to Ontario. Once your application is approved, you get a nomination certificate, okay? This means that you can now apply for permanent residence. However, really important, this permanent residence application, you're applying directly to IRCC, but because it's not through the express entry system and because you're not getting 600 points, it's going through the traditional first in, first out system, and the processing times are a lot longer than what we see with express entry. Okay. Now, with these employer-based streams, there are 3 categories, and we'll look at the specific criteria in a moment, but first I want to look at the employer's requirements. Okay. For the employer, the requirements are the same through all of the 3 employer-based streams. So the employer has to be in business for at least 3 years. Okay. If the employer is located inside of the Greater Toronto Area, then in the past fiscal year, they need to have grossed at least 1 million. And at the time of your application, they need to have at least 5 full-time Canadian or permanent resident employees. Now, if the employer is located outside of the Greater Toronto Area, those figures go down a bit. So the gross income requirement is at least 500,000 in the past fiscal year, and they only need to have 3 full-time Canadian or permanent resident employees when you're applying. The job offer that they're providing you does need to be full-time and permanent. And what I mean by that is that there's no end date on it. Okay, so it can't be a short-term contract. This does have to be a permanent full-time job offer. Let's take a look at the different streams now. The first one that I want to look at is the international student stream. Okay, so this is for individuals who have studied here. You do need to apply within 2 years of completing your program. And it's also important to know that there are specific programs that qualify for this stream. So if you've completed a degree or a diploma program that's at least 2 years in length or longer, but it's at least 2 years and it's a degree or diploma program, then it's fine. Those do qualify. Where you've done a degree, a diploma, or even a certificate program that's at least 1 year in length, then we look to the admission requirements for that particular program. The program needs to require that you have completed a degree before you can be admitted into the program. So if in terms of the admission requirements for the program, it states that you can have either a degree or a diploma or a degree or work experience, those programs do not qualify. Okay, this is really important. We see this come up a lot. Someone's completed a 1 year certificate program and the admission requirements for that program state that you can qualify for admission into this particular post-secondary program with either a degree or a diploma or a degree or work experience. That will no longer be eligible for this international student stream in the OINP program. There is no work experience requirement for the international student stream, and then the salary that's being offered for this position has to be at the entry-level wage. So it's a little lower than what we see in the other streams. The second program is the skilled worker stream. Okay, for this particular stream, you need to have at least 2 years of work experience in the same occupation as the position being offered to you. Okay, and then the salary that's being offered currently has to be at least a median, which is considered the prevailing wage. Okay, for both the skilled worker and the international student stream, we're looking only at high skilled positions. Okay, so very important that the job offer is in a high skilled position. And like we said, the salary does depend on the program or the stream that you're applying through. Lastly, we have the in-demand stream. With this particular stream, the position that's being offered to you has to be on the occupation list. And when we look at this occupation list, we're now looking at low skilled positions. Okay, so for this particular stream, you don't have to have a high skilled position. It can be a low skilled, but that low skilled has to be on the list of occupations that Ontario has outlined for this program. In terms of the salary, it does have to be median or prevailing wage. And you do need to have at least 9 months of experience in Ontario in the occupation, in the same occupation as the job offer that you're applying with. So those are the employer-based streams. So these are a great alternative to the federal programs that we talked about earlier, because you don't have to worry about qualifying for one of those federal programs. And so as you can see here for like the in-demand with the skilled worker, there's very different requirements than the federal streams.
So, a lot of times people say, well, this one is a lot longer, so why don't I go through express entry? It just depends on your own background, right? If you can go through express entry, then probably express entry would be the best one for you. But if you can't get selected through express entry, some time is better than no time, right? So longer, even though it's going to be longer, you have to have the employer to help you, and you have to stay with the employer until you get a decision. When I say longer, you're looking at 1.5 years to 2 years processing time, okay? But time does fly by, and at least by the time that your work permit expires, if you can be on your way towards this, you can also apply for a work permit as well. That is, based on your nomination here to work in until you get your permanent residence. Okay. The last program that I wanted to speak with you guys about is the Caregiver Program. Now, especially for those of you who are doing healthcare or ECE, or you're taking care of the elderly, etc. This is a good program that a lot of students don't actually give thought to. When a client comes to us, we look at all aspects. If you can get a job that's high skilled, fantastic, and maybe you can go through express entry. But if you get a job that's high skilled and you still don't have enough points for express entry, or you can't, find something that will work for the OIMP, this might be a good program. So what happens with this program is you have to just work for 2 years after you graduate to take care of someone in their home, either the children, elderly, or disabled person in their home. It has to be in their home. It can't be, with a agency or a nursing home, etc. Those kind of situations, we may be able to go through the in-demand program, but this one is basically someone is hiring you to work in their home. Now, if you already have your postgrad work permit, this is an open work permit, or even if your spouse already has an open work permit, they can just start working right away, okay? And so once you have 2 years of work experience, and you have to have a 1-year post-secondary education credential, of course, Mohawk would work. For your spouses, even if they had, the program anywhere else in the world, that's also okay. And also, if you have to meet this English or French benchmark of 5, which all of you should be okay. And that's about it. You can qualify for permanent residence based on the Caregiver Program. So just wanted to give you some food for thought with regard to that. Okay, so now we come to some advice for you guys.
I think you've heard about a lot of different programs today, right? We've talked about a lot of different ways to approach applying for permanent residence, keeping your status here. many different things to keep in mind. I think one of the most important aspects of immigration is to make sure that you have a plan, right? Know what your immigration goals are and have a plan as to how you're going to get there. And like Elizabeth said, you know, we always get the question, okay, should I just come talk to you after I finish my year of experience? No, plan your immigration out way before that, right? Immigration starts right when you're looking at that study permit application itself, because you want to be positioning yourself. You want to know, how long are you going to get a postgrad work permit for? How do you maximize that time? What kind of work experience do you need to be doing in order to qualify for that permanent residence? And what ways can you apply for permanent residence? These are all things that go into an immigration plan. So really important to be thinking about that as early as possible.
Right. So once you have your plan, you need to make sure that you do what you need to do to get there, right? So, you know, I often say what I do can be the most frustrating work, but it can also be the most rewarding work. It's the most frustrating work because I'm dealing with one of the most bureaucratic, areas of law that is out there in Canada. There's so much red tape and there's a lot of frustration with the system. But it's the most rewarding part of my work is because I get to work with people like you guys. And I feel like immigrants are just extraordinary people. For you guys to be able to leave everything you know and come to a brand new country and do what you do, it's amazing. So what you guys need to do at this point is to do one step further. And once you know what the plan is, then you need to do what you need to do to get there. So whether it's, study, and not only study, but take practice exams. There's like practice exams that I often refer my clients to on the IELTS website, the official website, that you can do, and they'll mark it for you. Those are, some things that you have to practice the exams for, right? Because oftentimes these exams don't just test your ability in the language, it tests your ability to do the exams as well, okay? Make sure your study program is what you need to do, right? And make sure, that's also in relation to your postgrad work permit. Make sure that your postgrad work permit gives you that opportunity that you need to get the work experience, get the job offer that you need. Okay.
And of course, make sure you stay in status while you're here in Canada. Really important, right? While you're here, don't want to complicate your situation. You want to make sure that you're applying for that extension on time, that you know what you need to be doing to keep your status. And very important as well, do not misrepresent. Okay, so very easy. We've been, a lot of times we're often told that from our clients, they've been advised to write something different on their application, or not include certain aspects of their background in their application from previous representation that they may have had. Really important that you're not doing that, okay? Because misrepresentation itself carries with it a 5-year ban, right? So if IRCC says, yes, you've misrepresented on your application, it can carry with it a 5-year ban. And even after those 5 years, it can be incredibly difficult to try and apply again for any type of immigration program. So important that you stay in status and don't misrepresent on your application.
And, misrepresentation can be as innocent as you not understanding what common law status means, right? So in immigration, if you have lived with someone for at least 1 year, only 1 year in a conjugal relationship, then you are common law. It doesn't matter if you have recognized it as common law or not, you are common law. And so when you apply on your application, you have to state that you are common law, okay? Sometimes people forget about work experience, etc. Those things can be amended afterwards. Sometimes when you're applying for study permits, the person who was helping you, the agent who was helping you, may have left out details like work experience or study experience, etc. That can come back and bite you as well. Okay, so those are some of the minor things. We go on to, other things. For example, yesterday someone came to me and said, oh, you know, one of my friends, they paid $15,000 and they got a job offer, right? I said, what does that sound like to you? Does that sound like a legitimate job offer, right? So make sure that you guys are not committing fraud, because that's a criminal offense. He said, this is kind of unethical. I said, no, it's not just unethical. It's fraud. It's criminal. Okay. And criminal offenses, if you guys are not Canadian citizens, criminal offenses will get you kicked out of the country faster than I don't know, faster than something, okay? So just make sure that you understand your obligations to accurately represent everything on your application, okay? Now, if your application is rejected, contact a lawyer right away. Only lawyers can go to court, okay? Not consultants, lawyers only. Now, you have very short period of time. If you wanted to go to the federal court to judicially review your application, you only have 15 days if the decision is made inside Canada. If it's made outside of Canada, you have 60 days to file the notice with the federal court. So you have to get an opinion right away to meet with a lawyer about this. Now, sometimes, you know, people often think, oh, the call center, they're my friends. I call the call center and they will help me, okay? Now, sometimes the call center people can be very nice and friendly. That does not mean that they're your friends, okay? This is not like Amazon where you call the call center and they help you. They have their own interests, and IRCC call center agents often, many times will offer the wrong advice. You can call them 2 times and they will offer you 2 different kinds of advice, okay? One kind of thing that they might say to you is, oh, you don't think it's fair? That's okay. Write a letter to IRCC and explain. Now, if you do that, you don't really know what to say, okay, and the officer looks at your application and rejects it, and then you want to go to a lawyer, right? Someone comes to me at that point, I say, well, I can't file a reconsideration anymore for you because you only get 1 kick at the can. You only get it to do it 1 time, okay? So make sure that you don't just take it on your own. When it's a rejection, it's very, very serious. It's not something that is easily fixable, okay? And the third thing is you may be also, your timeline starts expiring. You may be out of status. Restoration of status is within a very short period of time. So this is a critical period. Make sure, contact a lawyer right away, okay? All right, so this is our information. If you wanted to contact us about your situation, let us know that you've come to this seminar, and we will give you the discount for our seminar discounts, okay? And you can sign up. I'll sign you guys up anyway if you've registered for this webinar, but if not, you can always sign up for the news here as well. All right, let's go through some questions.
Ready for the first one?
Yeah, sure.
Right. Does co-op work experience count towards Canadian work experience?
So it depends on what you're talking about. If it is that you're looking at the Canadian experience class, then no, because when you're a co-op student, you're still a full-time student. So the Canadian experience class does not count work experience that you've gained while you are a full-time student. Okay, but there's other work experience. For example, the Federal Skilled Worker Program. You can get that work experience, will count towards you qualifying, but it won't count towards the Canadian work experience points for express entry. Okay, so next question, Zia. While waiting for the postgrad work permit, can we work full-time or part-time only? And could we travel outside of Canada during that period, or is it safer to wait for the postgrad work permit?
Okay, so let's go through the first part. So as soon as you submit your postgrad work permit application, if you hold a study permit at the time that you've applied, and you've applied properly, then you can start working full-time while you're waiting for a decision on that postgrad work permit. Okay. During that time, technically, yes, IRCC has said you are able to travel, but you also want to think about a couple things. One, do you have a visa? If you need a visa, if you're from a visa required country, do you have a valid visa? Will you be able to travel back to Canada? And two, they look at when your study permit was valid until when you try and re-enter. So generally with our clients, our advice is to wait in Canada while you're waiting for the postgrad work permit.
Right.
Anything
So,
you want to add to that, Liz?
yeah. So for example, sometimes, if you, the thing about maintained status or implied status is that if you apply before your study permit expires, you have status, right? Until a decision is made. Okay. But if you leave Canada while your study permit has expired, like Zia said, then your maintained status goes away. So at that period of time, if you're not in Canada and your postgrad work permit is about to be issued, and the officer knows that you're outside of Canada, they may not issue the postgrad work permit. So like Zia said, it's safer to wait inside Canada for your postgrad work permit. Okay.
Perfect. The next question. What is the TEER?
TEER, okay, the tiers. This is a new Noc system that likely will be in place next year. And it's instead of the OABCD, they're going to have tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, tier 4, tier 5, tier 6. And so basically, it's going to be a new classification system. Once it is incorporated into the IRCC, we'll let you guys know more about what that means. Okay. Okay, Zia, can someone work on the high-skilled work, but it's unrelated to the studies? Will they be eligible for permit? So basically, if someone is working in a high-skilled work, but it's unrelated to their studies, will they still be eligible for permanent residence?
Yeah, definitely. So for example, the Canadian Experience class, that program does not, your work experience and your education does not have to be related. Same thing with the international student stream that we talked about. Again, your work experience and your education do not have to be related. There are certain programs that we haven't gone through today where it is important to look at the area of study and the occupation that you're working in. But for the programs that we've talked about today, no, it's completely fine. It doesn't have to be in the same area. Okay, Elizabeth, next question is for you. Do I need to ask for and get an authorized leave document to cross the border to the US and back for a few days? Like if someone was traveling for a weekend or during the holidays?
No. Authorized leave is when you need to get leave for, let's say, a semester, because you just can't complete that semester. You need to get that from the school. If you're just traveling for the holidays, that's part of your normal study period, right? It's just a scheduled break or you're going for holidays. You just need your visas or your ETAs to come back to Canada. All right. Someone has a internship that ends in August, but the class ends around April. So when does the program end? And when can they stop? When do they have to stop working part-time?
So assuming that that internship is part of the program, then basically when that internship is completed, so basically at any point the school will provide confirmation that you have now completed the requirements of your program, including the internship. That would be the period when you would have to stop working part-time on your study permit. And it's important, I always see this I do see this come up frequently for those of you who have co-op or internships and you have your co-op work permit. That co-op work permit only allows you to work for your co-op, right? For work experience that's related to your program of study. After you have finished your program or any other work experience or any other positions, you can't just use that work permit and go and work somewhere else. It really is limited for work experience that's related to your program and for your program. Okay, Elizabeth, next question is for you. If I already qualify for express entry, okay, can I start by creating my profile right now and update it later when I have finished my program of study here in Canada?
Yeah, you can always put in your profile. It doesn't hurt. I mean, sometimes, I've told people, well, I don't necessarily know that you, based on the past draws, that you have a great chance, but I can never say no chance. Earlier this year, there was a draw where basically they invited everybody who qualified under the Canadian Experience class to apply. But, if you're under the Federal Skilled Worker class, you don't have a 1 year of work experience yet, and your points are, lower, maybe you don't have a big chance to get through. But, so if you don't get invited after 1 year, your profile will expire. Zia, someone has an issue with a co-op work permit in that they may not get the co-op work permit in time. What do you think? What would you think that they might be able to do?
If they can't get their co-op work permit in time to start their co-op?
Yeah.
That's a tough one because you can't work off campus more than the 20 hours a week if you don't have a co-op work permit.
Yeah.
I think really we're looking at situations where we can try and see if there's a way to get that co-op work permit and really identifying to see if we can get that expedited. But otherwise that co-op work permit is important.
Yeah, a lot of times you guys should be applying for your co-op way in advance. It should have been issued with your study permit, really. But oftentimes we know that the IRCC, they don't do what they're supposed to do, and they might miss giving you the co-op work permit. But if you don't have a co-op, you have to do a co-op, go and apply for it, because it could take around 3 months or more to get your co-op work permit. Now, if you were to only need to do 20 hours off camp, but like 20 hours for your co-op, that might be a solution because you are able to work off campus for 20 hours a week. And sometimes, there are, so even if you're not paid for it, it still could be considered work because it's part of an internship. And that basically you still need that co-op work permit. So do try to get your co-op work permit ASAP as soon as possible. Okay.
Yeah. Okay, next question for you, Elizabeth. If I finish my program in April, can I apply to another program that starts in September? Mm-hmm. And then from May until September, can I work during that period of time?
Mm-hmm. Yes, absolutely. So that's one of the scenarios that Zia had gone through. If you have completed your program, your 1 year, let's say you completed a 1 year program, and oh, you know what, it's not going to be enough, I need a 3 year work permit, go and apply to do the second program. And if you've been already accepted to the second program, and you've completed the first program, you can work in between the two programs as long as it's less than 150 days and you can work full time. Okay. Someone is in their last semester and everything else was full-time, but they're just missing 2 classes. In the last semester, they only need to do 2 classes. Can they work during the last semester?
Yeah, so this is one of those exceptions that we were talking about earlier. So basically the rule is that in order to work off campus, you have to be a full-time student, but the exception to that is in your last semester of studies, if you only require a part-time course load in order to meet the requirements of your program, then you're able to work, you're able to study part-time and still maintain your ability to work off campus part-time as well. Elizabeth, question for you. Does CELPIP have an expiry period like IELTS?
Yes, 2 years. All the exams, 2 years. That's the expiry period. That was easy.
That was a good one.
Someone is asking, what's the probability to be selected in the express entry? When's the right time to apply?
That's a great question. It really goes back to planning, right? So, I mean, difficult to say what the probability is without knowing an individual's background. So what I would recommend is that, well, on the screen right now, you have our contact information, you have our email address. I'd recommend scheduling a consultation appointment so we can go through your background, talk about the options available to you, talk about your points and the likelihood of going through express entry and looking at timelines. Next question for you, Elizabeth. Can I change my diploma program?
Yes, you can. I think that's more of an issue with the school than anything like that. If you change your diploma program on your study permit, it should stay any of the DLIs. So even if you know, you at first applied for one program, but if you're in Canada and you want to switch to another program, you can, or another school, you can do that. If you wanted to switch to another program inside the school, that's not an issue at all. Now, if you're outside of Canada though, and you decide you applied for your study permit with one institution, but then you say, well, I actually want to go to another institution, technically speaking, IRCC is requiring you to file another study permit for another institution.
Yeah.
Okay. Do co-op programs offer any advantages in terms of immigration? Oh, no, I think this was already answered, right?
We might have done this one.
Yeah, we already did this one. Okay. Does the 9 months of in-demand full-time job experience have the same employer requirements that you talked about? So the 1 million gross revenue, 3 years in business, number of employees, etc.
So what you're looking at is the OINP program, employer job opportunities for in-demand occupations. The 9 months that you are working, the employer does not need to qualify. When you're applying through the employer job offer stream, you're applying with the support of an employer. So you have a permanent full-time position at that time, and you have the employer support. It's that company that you're using when you submit your application that needs to qualify. So your work experience can be with a different employer. It doesn't have to be with the same employer. It just needs to be in Ontario and in the same occupation. So the previous employer may not qualify, but your current employer that you're using at the time of application does need to qualify. Elizabeth, can you please provide information on the new TR to PR system?
It's over. It's over. It was over in November 5th, was it?
Yeah. 5th.
So no more program. I mean, you know, they may come up with a new program again. If they do, we normally have a webinar just on the program and talking about the new programs. Okay, so someone has 2 years of work experience in their home country in a skilled job. They're in the 30s, only taking 1-year program. Do you recommend them to study another program?
I recommend that you contact a lawyer, contact us. Our information is right here on the slide, because really, again, immigration is very personalized. We would have to go through your background, talk about the options that are available to you, come up with an immigration plan, and then we'll be in a position to say, okay, what's the likelihood of being able to apply for permanent residence right now, or is there other steps that you need to take? Elizabeth, what happens with my husband's open work permit after I apply for the postgrad work permit? Does it cover him?
Yes, okay, this is very important. So first of all, a spousal work permit is good until it expires. Okay, so the work permit that your spouse gets would normally correspond to your study permit expiry date. So their work permit is good until then. Now, if they want to extend their work permit, they can only if you have your work permit or you're applying for your work permit and you have a high skilled job offer. It doesn't have to be full-time, but they will be looking at whether or not you have enough funds to support yourself if it's not full-time, but it has to be high skilled. Okay, so this is a multiple question, 4 questions.
Okay, go for it.
I am on my last term. Just to clarify, I need to have the same job with the program after graduation to be considered for the CEC?
So CEC does not require that you're in the same position, same occupation, same employer. We are looking at cumulatively having a total of 1 year of experience. Again, that's obtained while you're not a full-time student, but it's a total of 1 year. It's not like the federal skilled worker program where it has to be continuous.
Okay, while working, we can already create an express entry profile and then update it after a year.
You can create an express entry profile at any point in time. It can be while you're studying, it can be while you've just started working. The only thing is you have to be eligible, right? So we go back to the eligibility criteria that Elizabeth talked about earlier. As long as you're eligible, you can go into the pool. And then in terms of updating it, it can be updated at any time. The profile itself is valid for 1 year. After a year, it expires. But even at that point, you can recreate and go back into the pool. So it's not a matter of, okay, you can only be in a pool for a maximum of a year or anything like that. It's just a particular profile will only be valid for a year. It'll expire at the end of the year. But yes, during that year, at any point, you can update it.
Is there a minimum number of hours to qualify for CEC?
So the equivalent of basically for CEC, you need a year of work experience. That's based on 30 hours a week, which comes out to be 1,560 hours.
Someone is working as a collections agent. Is that high skilled?
So we never just look at the position title itself. We want to look at the duties to see if it falls under one of the high skilled occupations. Again, that's what we do during the consultation appointment. And again, going through options and talking about how we can use work experience or how we can use 2 different spouses together to see what the best route is for applying for permanent residence. Again, always go back to that immigration plan, really important. And where you have a spouse, you have twice the opportunity, right? Because we can look at both of your backgrounds and see who's able to first apply for permanent residence.
You know that Eminem song? This opportunity, that always goes through my mind when one opportunity, one shot.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that one.
Here yeah. It's two for spouses.
2 shot. Each have 1 shot.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Elizabeth, does volunteer work count for points for permanent residence?
No, you have to be paid.
Okay, and that another one for you. Okay. After finishing the diploma program of 2 years in Mohawk and I get a job offer as a full-time employee with a permanent contract, can I apply for permanent residence?
It just depends. It really depends on your situation. Maybe you could, based on one of the programs, but normally we spend half an hour to an hour going through your plans for immigration, and that's what we would have to do in your situation. Okay. What if we are former, they want a discount. Come and talk to us. We do give discounts for people who've come to our webinar, come to our seminar. You will get a discount already for your consultation if you tell us you've come to this webinar already. Okay.
I think we answered this one as well.
Okay, cool. Okay, so this one is a 4-part. You always got a 4-part question. Already did this. Okay, great. Where can I find more information about working part-time in my last semester with exception?
well, we've covered it, but it's also on IRCC's website if you can navigate it.
Okay.
Their website.
Okay, we got another question. Is caregiver or personal support worker low skilled or high skilled?
The traditional, if it's the traditional caregiver or PSW role, then it's low skilled, which is why there's a totally different program for it. That's the caregiver program that Elizabeth was talking about earlier.
There may be, in the new Noc Codes, there may be a little bit of a differential between the two tiers, depending, because they've separated some of these old Noc occupations as well. So stay tuned. But for the most part, right now, it's all low skilled. That's why we have the special caregiver program. Oh.
Okay, during a session break, how many hours can I work as a student?
You can work as many hours as you want, as long as it's on the academic calendar and the scheduled break. This person asked, can her husband continue to work while they wait for the postgrad work permit to be approved?
So it depends on his work permit, right? So as long as he has a work permit and you're applying for an extension, then he can continue working. I came to Canada with a 3-year and 1-year co-op program, changed my program to 2-year. Will that create an issue while applying for the work permit?
No, usually you should be okay. As long as you meet the criteria for the work permit afterwards and you were studying legally, then you're fine. I have IELTS academic. Can I use that, or does it have to be IELTS general?
For PR purposes, it does have to be the general test.
Okay.
Can I call my brother as well on my convocation with my mother, and will he get the visa?
Just depends on the situation. Every application is different, and it'll depend on the officer and the application. My spouse is working and he is in a Noc B job. In the future, he wants to move to another job, but he needs to start in the entry level that won't be experience. What is your advice? If he has more than 1 year at an experienced job, does that give us more points? Consultation. Consultation.
That's it.
What is the right time to take IELTS for the CEC application? Like 6 months before planning to apply for PR, or as soon as an express entry profile is created?
Well, you can't create the express entry profile without the language test results. So it would definitely be before we were looking at creating the express entry profile. But again, certainly I think this is one of those situations where you want to have a consultation so we can work through when you're doing what.
Yeah, so sometimes, you can save a lot of money by having proper advice, because let's say that even if you get the highest level for English, right, you still won't qualify for express entry. Then why would you need to go through all that trouble to do it, right? Or you won't have a good chance, because sometimes if you applied for other programs, you don't even need like the under the OIMP for federal, for the skilled worker program, you don't need the language points. So it's just save your time and money and energy by properly planning first, right?
Next question is about study permits. My new passport has a name modification. How can I get in contact with immigration to modify that study permit?
Good question. It's going to require some of the contacting. Yeah, it's going to.
New application to amend.
Yeah, you'll probably need to apply for new.
Yeah, you're looking at amending. So basically, if IRCC's made a mistake on the study permit, then yes, you can ask for them to amend it without applying for a new one. But if something's changed, then you have to apply for a whole new study permit. They don't just change it.
Yeah. This session will be recorded and it will be uploaded. We have a YouTube channel that we upload there, and it's also on our website. And we'll be sending you guys the link shortly afterwards. It takes me a few days to edit the video, and then afterwards we'll send it to you, and the slides as well if you've registered for this. Oh, someone just came on the Zoom link and asked, how do they get the permanent residency?
Good thing it's being recorded.
Come and contact us and arrange for a consultation. We'll be up to help you. Okay, my fiance is a citizen and she wants to file PR for me to stay. Does your firm help with that process?
Yes, we do. Contact us. We'll set up a consultation appointment and we'll walk you through it.
Basically, anything that you guys want to do that has to do with immigration, our firm does.
Yep.
Oh.
Can I start working full-time as soon as I finish my last exam, or do I need to wait for my grades?
You can work part-time until you get your grades. When you get your grades, you have to stop working. You can't work full-time or part-time when you get your grades, okay? When you can start working again only after you have applied for your post-grad work permit properly, if your study permit is still valid. I am going to get my 2-year program completed this year and I have my spouse with me working full-time. Does this give us a high chance of getting PR?
Contact us for a consultation. We'll walk you through it. Go through your background.
Yeah. I mean, guys, I'm sorry to keep on saying this to you because oftentimes people think that, oh, it should be obvious, but it's not. And we can't properly give advice without understanding all of the facts and also understanding your priorities as well. And oftentimes people, they'll ask us, oh, how much is it to get PR? How much do you guys charge to get PR? That's kind of like you walking into a restaurant and asking people, how much is dinner, right? We can't know until we have a plan for you, and we can't have a plan for you until we speak with you and have all the facts. That's why it's very important to have a proper consultation to do that. If you ever go to someone and before they even understand all of the facts of your case and speak with you at length and just give you solutions, those are not real solutions because they're not catered to you. Okay.
No. And even like the options that we've gone through today, those are just some of them, right? There's certainly more programs available for permanent residents for applying than we could possibly talk about today. And so all of that is what we go through with you. We evaluate for you during that consultation appointment. And like Elizabeth said, I mean, there's no one solution for everyone, right? It is very much personalized. It is very much about getting to know our client's background and then going from there in terms of identifying options and talking about that plan.
Okay. Program is 2 years diploma. How long they get the postgrad work permit?
So if you've done a program that's 2 years or longer, then you're eligible for a 3-year work permit, which is the maximum length that they give.
Can you call the number on the screen or email? I find that email works better because oftentimes when I'm in meetings, I don't answer the phone, but you can also call the number and our office manager will be booking you in for a consult with us. Oh, what's the name of the YouTube channel? I can't remember, but if you Google Long Mango G, it should be on there.
And also on our website, when you go under the videos, all of the videos link back to YouTube as well. So it's all there.
Yes.
Yep, you guys are on YouTube. So that's easily found if you just go on YouTube and search for your law firm for sure. And you guys have answered over 40 questions. That's amazing. Thank you so much for taking the time to do that. I really do appreciate it. I'm assuming all students appreciate it as well. Thank you so much for coming in today. And I really encourage your students to get a hold of you to get clarification to their personal sort of situation. So appreciate it.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much, Hassan. Take care,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Yes, take care.
Take care. See ya.